I want to talk about how some feminists have been understanding and talking about the war that Israel is currently engaged in against Hamas and in Gaza. So on October 7th, of course, Hamas launched a most brutal attack. And a really important part of the brutality of that attack was the attacks against women. If you don't know much about what happened to women on October 7th and what happened to the women who were taken hostage into Gaza, then please watch Sheryl Sandberg's documentary, Screams Before Silence, and read the New York Times article, Screams Without Words. I'll briefly share a little bit about it, but really it's just the worst things that could possibly have happened. So the misogyny that was so much part of the attack on October 7th was so present in both the raping of girls and teenagers and women, and also in the way in which they were mutilating women's bodies. So, cutting off breasts, for example. And the murders of babies, the ways in which babies were murdered. These attacks were specifically attacks on women and children. They were very gendered, and they were deeply rooted in misogyny and also deeply rooted in a genocidal desire to destroy the Jewish people. The Jewish people are defined by matrilineal descent. And so to destroy our women is to destroy our people. And Hamas knows that, and that was part of their objective, and it was part of their war plan, was to engage in that level of using sexual assault and violence against women and children as a tool of torture and as a tool of war and as a way to emasculate the Jewish men and all of these things. So the feminist response to this, really unfortunately, was not what I would have hoped. And I've been a feminist scholar for my entire academic career. And I have, read all the same books that all the feminist legal theorists have read. And I've written articles on the same topics about sexual assault and about intersections of law and motherhood and about violence against mothers and violence against women. And what happened on October 7th was such a clear-cut case of patriarchal violence and misogynistic violence. And of course, we all know that across the board, feminist communities were relatively silent about this. And that in and of itself is upsetting enough. I was honestly pretty devastated. But it's actually worse than that. Worse than the silence when it came to the attacks on Jewish and Israeli women was that there was a letter written by feminist law professors that argued that Israel weaponized sexual assault. So the claim was that Israel took sexual assault and used it as an excuse to engage in an evil war against the perpetrators of that sexual assault. And that letter, in my mind, is such a deep betrayal of everything feminist that I've ever believed in that I don't even know what to do with it. Weaponizing sexual assault sounds like it means that we're allowed to condemn sexual assault and we're allowed to talk about why sexual assault is wrong, but we're not allowed to stop sexual assault, and we're not allowed to punish sexual assault, which is absolutely what Israel was doing. In waging war against Hamas, that was A, to stop it, and B, to prevent it from happening again, and C, to punish those who had committed it. All laudable goals as far as any feminist concerned about the integrity of women's bodies should feel, right? How can you be anti-sexual assault and then criticize those who take action against sexual assault for weaponizing it. I want to add that Israel is one of the only countries, maybe the only country, in the history of war that has not used sexual assault or rape as a tool of war. And that should be considered really meaningful. And that conclusion is based on multiple studies that have been done, including interviews conducted by Prop-Katrin-McKinnon, esteemed law professor, mother of radical dominance feminism, and essentially founder of the entire idea that sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination. So Prop-Katrin-McKinnon herself interviewed Palestinian women and found no evidence that Israel engages in the use of rape as a tool of war. Other researchers have reached the same conclusion. And in the book, Our Bodies, Their Battlefields by Christina Lamb, war correspondent from London, who essentially wrote a book about how prevalent rape and sexual assault are used as a tool of war. She has also identified, in an interview, she identified that there is a country where there is no evidence of that, and that country is Israel. It may very well be that there is such a strong presence of women in the Israeli army. It may very well be that the Israeli army was established as a response to, in part, the grave human rights abuses that took place during World War II, and that this army was created with such intention to be an army that is moral, that is defensive in nature, and that upholds the values of all human life. Anyway, it's up for debate, the questions and about why, and there's tremendous opportunity for research for anyone who's interested. But we don't know why it isn't an army that rapes. What we do know is it isn't an army that rapes. So the feminist response to this, to the way Israel reacted to October 7th, and its demonization of Israel for daring to protect its women and girls, for daring to avenge the vile crimes against their women and girls' bodies. The feminist response is, in my view, abhorrent.